Hello everybody, I am Sheples and welcome back to Let's Play Aqua Kitty Arcade Mode. God knows how many times this is going to actually take me to do this. Probably 590 something. Imagine. Anyway. This arcade mode is really turning into my rambling dumping ground, isn't it? Last time we were going on about, we somehow got from talking about arcade to talking about Alien, and then, you know, to Colonial Marines, and oh boy, it's turning into my ramblers dumping ground, I suppose you could say. But hell, you know, there is only so much you can talk about one game. You know, you can only do that for so long. Generally, by the time you've done a Let's Play, you've practically talked about everything there is to talk about. And so, yeah, I kind of go a bit wayward after a while. But yeah, the last thing that I was talking about was things like Alien vs Predator and Freddy vs Jason and things like that. And the one thing I did forget to mention, there was supposed to be a the way that there was a Freddy vs Jason, there was supposed to be a Freddy vs Jason versus Bruce, or versus Campbell, one or the other. And it was basically supposed to be Freddy, Jason, and Bruce Campbell from Evil Dead. So, but that, needless to say, that never actually came true. Like it never actually happened. Surprise, surprise! Like, God, how could that have ever worked? I don't know. But I don't know if it was actually. I think I remember reading somewhere that there was a comic of that somewhere. I don't know, an online comic or something of basically Freddy versus Jason versus Campbell. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, if I remember. But yeah, fucking hell. And then of course we were talking about Colonial Marines and basically how much I want to destroy it when I get a new computer. But yeah, I mean there's you know, when I get a new computer, I'm not just gonna use it to rip the shit out of fucking Colonial Marines, you know, because like I've said in a number of Let's Plays now, you know, I've been trying to get a new computer for a long time, and I haven't. It just hasn't been possible. And oh God, we're going back to the last part, aren't we? Where the last attempt, where we're going to be losing kitties all over the place. But you know, like there's tons and tons of games that I'm just dying to just play, because you know, there's so many good games out there that I want to play, and I haven't been able to play them. Like as I said at the end of the last video on Aqua Kitty Arcade Mode, I was saying that they murdered Fear 3. Fear 3 was not a great game at all. Well, okay, I'm going to sort of eat my own words on that now when I kind of go into detail. But Fear 3 was a solid shooter. I'll put it that way. It was a solid shooter. Like, you know, it was fun to play, but as a part of the Fear series, it was pretty shitty. You know, if it was just a standalone game that didn't have the Fear franchise attached to it, it would have been a good game. But as an actual game that was a part of the Fear series, it was pretty crappy. You know, again, it goes back to the whole co-op thing for a start, because when you add co-op to a horror game, the problem with that is that you gotta change the game. You gotta change the gameplay. You gotta change the style. If you're going to have co-op in a game. Now, I don't know what way they work this with Dead Space 3 because I haven't played Dead Space 3. But that's on my to-do list when I get a new computer as well. I'm going to do the entire Dead Space series when we get the new computer. It's something that I've wanted to do because I really enjoyed the first two Dead Space games. I wouldn't have called them necessarily extremely scary, but I still enjoyed them for what they were. But going back to what I was saying about having co-op and how it affected Fear 3, as I said, I can't pin this on to Dead Space 3 because I don't literally know because I haven't played it. But the problem when you have a horror game and you go and add co-op into it, the thing is you're going to have to change the way that it works and the way that the game plays, and this was the major downfall of Fear 3, and it kind of destroyed everything. Like the second one wasn't that great either. I didn't really like the second one. The second one was kind of went in the same direction, even though it wasn't co-op. But you know, I'm basically talking about Fear 3 here, so I'm not going to get sidetracked. But what happened is that because they turned it co-op, they had to increase the amount of combat in it. So what you ended up having was essentially a horror game that was just a pure first-person shooter. It was all about combat, because like Fear 1 had the perfect balance between the two, where it had its fair share of combat, but it had those moments where you were combat free that allowed to build up tension and sort of, you know, you got you all jittery, and sometimes it fires something at you, and sometimes you sort of get things unexpected and things like that. But they were never necessarily cheap jump scares either. There was always something different about them, like, you know, the visions you had, or where you actually control them, like where you fall into a big pool of blood or something on a maternity ward. Was one of the more memorable moments. But it needed, for that to be as effective as it was, and it's what they did well, was that they used the time away from combat to build up that tension, and like you knew that something was going to happen, but you had no idea what it was. So you had this kind of creepy feeling all along, and then when it does happen, you're already fucking creeped out when it happens. So, you know, you're already on edge, and you're like, and the hairs on the back of your neck are sticking up, and that. But with Fear 3, they couldn't do that because they had to increase the amount of combat, they had to increase the amount of enemies and everything, and they had to keep the action constant, otherwise the co-op would get boring. So what ended up happening was the game ended up being an occasional cheap ass jump scare, as opposed to what the Fear series had become known for, particularly with the first one. And it ended up turning into just kind of a standard shooter with a couple of jump scares in it. And I didn't quite finish it because near the end it got a little bit heavy for my system, and it lagged like shit, and it'd be impossible for me to, you know, get past this one part. So I ended up leaving it at that, but I had played a majority of it. I had seen enough to kind of state my opinion, and it felt like a shooter more than than supposed to be a horror game, which was extremely disappointing for, you know, the finale of the Fear series, because it was genuinely a decent horror series. Like the first one really was a good horror game. It was solid. It had everything right. It did everything right, and a lot of it was the combination and the balance of the combat and those non-combat moments that were used to build up tension. And the thing about it is that it was never predictable, because you often got moments. You know, you did get moments that were non-combat, but nothing happened. So you could never be 100% sure whether there was something going to happen or not. And it used it really well to catch the player off guard. But Fear 3 was just... It really was very disappointing. Like, you know, from a horror aspect. From a fun shooter aspect, it was really good. I thought it was probably one of the most solid first-person shooters I've played in a long time. Particularly when it came to using cover, it did that brilliantly. Because you know the usual saying, the chest-high wall, and you know, even when you're behind that cover, you can still get shot. But with Fear 3, they did that really well, where cover was actually cover unless somebody flanked you. So I think as a shooter it was brilliant, but as a horror game it was crap. And again, it boils down to the co-op play, because even when you're playing single player, it's still the same as what it would be when you're co-op. It's just you're on your own, and you know, your co-op partner is only brought into it in cutscenes for the story element. But the gameplay still works the same, where it's just, you know, it's still a shooter more than a horror. But I mean, they started that with Fear 2, where Fear 2 kind of had more action in it than horror elements, and it was just kind of, you know, there was a lot of sudden moments, like, you know, sort of kind of cheapy jump scares with the second one as well. But considering John Carpenter was apparently on board for Fear 3, it was very disappointing from a horror aspect, because John Carpenter was supposed to be on board. Like, it has it on the back of the fucking box. So, like Carpenter made the Thing, for fuck's sake. I mean, he's no man that, like, he's not a man that's not used to horror or suspense or anything like that, because he's made some very iconic films over the years, and very good horror films. So, like, I can't see his involvement with Fear 3, despite the fact that it even says it on the back of the fucking box. I just can't see it there. I don't... I'm left asking myself, what part of this did Carpenter have a part in? Because, you know, there's a couple of moments that you can kind of say throughout the game that you're kind of like, maybe it's a bit Carpenter-ish, but not really. And you just end up being kind of like, did he really have anything to do with this or not? And you still don't know. Even when you get as far in the game as I was, you're still not sure as to what exactly Carpenter put into that game. Like, what were his ideas, what weren't his ideas, because there's just nothing there that really stands out from the crowd. Like I said, there's one or two moments where you're kind of like, yeah, this is possibly him, this is possibly his idea, but oh god, I'm gonna die. But you're never really sure, and I don't know. I just I don't know. There's a part of me that kind of feels that general movie directors and writers don't generally do a good job on games when they're writing for games and that, because writing for a computer game is very different to writing for a movie, I think. Now correct me if I'm wrong on that, I'm not a professional writer in any shape or form, but I think there is a significant difference when it comes to the writing of, especially for something like a first-person shooter. But I could be wrong. You know, if I am, by all means, do correct me. But I think that there's a massive difference between the two, between a movie and writing a movie and writing a game. Like I myself, I'd be okay at writing a story for a game, but I'd be dreadful at writing a story for a movie. I know well I'd be crap at it. But with a game, I'm not too bad, because my knowledge of games and how stories work with games is far superior to that of movies, because, let's face it, I've played a lot more games than I've watched movies. But, you know, I just don't think that it works that well. I mean, I think the only exception with that one was maybe Clive Barker, because Undying was a great game, and it had a great story to it. A few flaws, which were not in Barker's general way, because he's quite a good writer. Like I've read a couple of his books, and I've seen a lot of his different movies. But it's you know, he did make another game shortly after the Xbox 360 was released. I can't just say Xbox anymore, because, well, there's Xbox One now, so I can't exactly say just Xbox for the 360 anymore. But when the 360 was released, he had developed a game called Jericho, which, to my knowledge, was only his second game. He might have written for more than that, I'm not sure. But the story wasn't very good with Jericho. The enemies and things like that were pure Barker. There's no doubt about that. They were pure Barker's twisted, demented mind. I don't mean that in an offensive way. I mean that as in he's got an extremely dark and twisted imagination. You know, that part was Barker. There's no doubt about that. But the story for Barker was, you know, I'm not sure whether how much of that was him, because the story itself was not very reminiscent of Barker. It didn't seem like something he had written, whilst the enemies and the general idea of the level design and things like that were his idea, and he sort of just said, right, this is how we're going to do it, and then the developers just sort of based on his idea. That's kind of how it felt, but the story didn't feel very necessarily Barker-like. It wasn't twisted enough, it wasn't dark enough. I don't know whether saying that it's not dark enough is the right way of putting it, but it wasn't as dark as what you would normally get from Barker. So again, it's kind of like Fear 3 for me. I'm not sure what part of the game was actually Barker involved. It's something I just can't put my finger on, because the game is named after him, which is Clive Barker's Jericho, just like Undying, and he wrote the story of Undying. So but the story was very out of character for him. It wasn't quite his style, really. I didn't think so. Like something like Undying was perfect Barker style. That was Barker all day long. But Jericho, there was just something about it that wasn't quite him with the story, and I don't know what that was about. I don't know whether he just wanted to change or do something different or what. I don't know. But it just didn't have that Barker feel to it, whilst the enemies did and the environments did, but the story itself didn't quite feel necessarily like him to a particular point. It's hard for me to pinpoint because it's been a while since I've played it, but like, no, I haven't played it for about 6-7 years, but you know, you could see his influence on the enemies and you could see his influence on probably the setting, but the overall story was I don't know, it just didn't quite feel 100% Barker for me. God, we're losing kittens all over the place, or cats or whatever. I just can't put my finger on it. It's just something. I think it's the way it ended. The game ended for me. I'm not going to ruin it for anybody by saying how it ended, but for Barker, its ending was very poor. The ending was horrible. It was about 10 seconds, about 10-20 seconds long. That was it. You know, it didn't. Like, I know Undying didn't end particularly well, you know, but that was because they had planned a sequel. But Jericho didn't even have an ending that you could continue from, and it didn't really have much closure to it either, which is unusual for Barker, because he either leaves it open for a sequel and leaves it blatantly obvious, or he usually gives good closure, and he did neither in Jericho. And oh god, I've just lost a life now because of hitting a bloody power up. Oh god, well, I'm not going to get back that cat anyway. But I don't know. Again, it wasn't one of his better works. Again, you just don't know how much actual involvement that you had. I mean, I think I remember reading somewhere that when it came to Fear 3, Carpenter had involvement in cutscenes in Fear 3. But that just raises even more questions, because the cutscenes have no horror element to them at all. They're just there to yammer on and fill in not even any sort of remotely interesting history to Fear. It just ramble, you know, it's just there for the sake of being there. And I just can't turn around and say, yeah, that was Carpenter. I can't, because there's no horror there, which is what Carpenter is known for. The cutscenes are dreadful, generally speaking. They're not that good. They're impressive because of the sheer and utter graphics, but I wouldn't call them any more impressive than Fear 1, because for some strange reason, and I don't know why. And the same thing happened with Doom 3, is that I thought personally the graphics were slightly better in Fear 1, and a part of that doesn't really make sense, but overall that's how I felt about it. I genuinely felt that the graphics were better in Fear 1, and I even went back and played Fear 1 shortly after playing Fear 3, and I still, my judgment is still the same. I still think that the graphics were better in Fear 1. Now, this goes back again so as I just said a moment ago, to Doom 3, because earlier, maybe not last year, I think it could have been late the year, I think it was late 2012, Doom 3 BFG edition was released, and I did get the BFG edition, but unfortunately this is a XP system, so it needs Windows 7 minimum because of the OpenGL difference. The OpenGL is not compatible with XP machines for BFG edition. Well, it goes back to that where afterwards I said, okay, I just accepted the fact that, okay, I'm just gonna have to get a new computer before playing Doom 3 BFG edition. But I looked up some screenshots of Doom 3 BFG because I wanted to see, I said, right, okay, it's been, about 8 years since Doom 3 was released, and I thought about it and I said, I don't know how they could improve the graphics, because the graphics in Doom 3 were spectacular. There was, like, the lighting was unbelievable. Like, when you saw those big piles of flesh that you'd often find around the base, and if you shined your flashlight on them, it was so cool the way the actual shine from your flashlight actually could be seen 100% on this big lump of flesh that was basically sitting on some bathroom wall or something. And I said, I don't know how they'd even plan on improving the graphics. But I said to myself, am I going to question John Carmack? Bollocks. And it turned out that when I was looking at the screenshots of BFG edition towards Doom 3, the graphics were actually worse than BFG for some strange reason, and I don't know why, and I'm waiting until I can play BFG to confirm this. But when I looked at the screenshots from BFG edition to the original Doom 3 edition, the graphics aren't nearly as good. They look terrible compared to the original, and I don't understand this. And it was the same with Fear, I just don't know why. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to leave it here for this part, guys, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and as always, I will see you in the next one. Thank you, and have fun.